Hello.
Hi, Scott. We're having technical issues. So
Okay.
so I had to run up to my office and get it signed in on this computer because I don't have any internet downstairs. So
Oh,
hopefully Chapin's gonna join because he's connected to the OWL. So give us another 3 minutes and we should be going, okay?
okay.
Thank you.
Oh, there it is. It's on the award one. We're at the bottom. So you're.
I started the meeting and Scott should.
Hey, yeah, I can hear.
Yeah, and Scott should be the one joining the Zoom, so it should be okay. So sorry. We're gonna.
There's. All right, we'll call to order the December 12th meeting of the Leadville Historic Preservation Commission meeting. Please forgive the delayed start, technical problems. Laura, would you give us a roll call?
Sure. Thank you and sorry about the delay. Commissioner Edwards,
Here.
Commissioner Winston,
Here.
Chair Martin is absent, Commissioner Stillman,
Here.
Commissioner Whittington,
Here.
alternate Bailey. Here. Alternate Flagger is out of the country. Okay, you have a forum.
Thank you. Any revisions to the agenda this evening? Anything anyone would like to add? Hearing none, could I get a motion for approval of the agenda?
I will motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second that. Whittington seconds. Thank you. And approval of minutes for the November 14th meeting. Thank you. Everyone in favor of approving the agenda?
Aye.
Survey discussion.
I was just gonna. We can put it under something. Let's put it in. We'll get the.
Thank you. And could I get a motion for approving the minutes for the November 14th meeting, please?
I move that we approve the minutes for the November 14th meeting.
Second that.
Thank you. Public comment or any Thank you. All in favor of approval of the minutes for the November 14th meeting?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm opposed. It says Mayor Greg Walby has a short, but no.
That's good. All right, public comments. We don't have any public in attendance. We don't have any public on Zoom tonight. Any items not on the agenda anyone would like to add?
Some point, so. Poster boards that, City Homes of Missouri sent to me, some examples of what they have in their storage area. Just let people look at it and see what they think.
That sounds great, and that is on the agenda, so we will get to that in just a minute. Thank you. Ms. Ty, housekeeping items?
Okay, in your packet is the CLG news for December, as well as the CPI November newsletter. Remember, CPI does it at the end of the month, and then CLG does it at the beginning of the month. So both of those are included in your packet. Nothing that I wanted to bring to your attention other than you should always look at those as great training opportunities and things like that. And that's all I have to say about it.
Thank you. Moving on to updates.
On that we started.
That's okay. First update on the agenda is the Saving Places registration.
Correct. As you guys know, at this meeting, we discussed who was gonna attend, who wanted to attend, in person, virtually, and I sent an email on that, you guys, because I want to submit the scholarship. So I submitted, and it was due by December 1st. No, December 1st was the early bird. It was a first come, first served type scholarship. Each CLG was capped at $1,000. So it's the day it opened, I submitted, and Chapin didn't even put his name on there because he always goes to the same places. So I submitted a scholarship application for 5 virtual people to attend Saving Places and 2 in person to attend Saving Places. And we got all of it. We got $897, which is exactly what I asked for. So we have a Saving Places scholarship for 5 people to attend virtually and 2 people to attend in person. And that's really exciting because that's 7 total people going to Saving Places, which is a record for us. And another thing I wanted to note, Stuart is going as an advisory member, but Rebecca Thomas, his wife, as you know, is a city council member, and she was interested in going. And I, to my knowledge, it's the first time we've had a city council member that was wanting to attend. So I put her name as well for a scholarship. And those are the 2 in-person scholarships we got. And then I put, I'm trying to remember who all I put on there. I put Scott and Steve had told me they wanted to go. And then I put Chapin and myself.
And I think I let you.
And you did, it was virtually, that, and Joey. So everyone who said they wanted to go, I've gotten a scholarship for, but just know that doesn't mean anyone else wants to go, because now we'll just pay for it. But we've saved ourselves $897 by getting that scholarship. So, good job. All that to say that we got a scholarship.
Are we actually registered or do we?
Not yet. It wrote the curriculum, for lack of a better word. If you guys want, you can either do it either way. You can either go ahead and register yourselves, just make sure you save me the receipt and know that you have to put in the scholarship, and we can switch that around if other people go. And then you have to give a little synopsis summary of what you thought about the class, for the conference as a whole. So there's a few stipulations to getting that. We just have to discuss it in the next meeting, which we always do anyway. So, but I did print this out. So if today you wanted me to register with you, you can tell me what classes you wanted to sign up for, and I'll be glad to do it. If you'd rather register yourself, that's fine with me. You just have to save your receipt and send it to me so that we can get the scholarship reimbursement from District Colorado. But I did print out one copy of this if everybody wanted to look at it today.
That's cool. That also helps us, helps HPC with our end of year review with the state.
Very much so.
It also helps us from a certified local government standard for the city.
Yes, like Steve was mentioning at our last meeting, the requirements for CLG are so very low that it's really exciting when we go above and beyond. I mean, having 7 people attend city places, that's not happened since I've been here. So it's very exciting, and I know the state is gonna look very holy on that. So they know, they can see that Leadville's getting engaged. They're doing things and people are starting to support them and wanting to learn more about what they're doing. Just like I think it's super exciting to have a city council member attend that. So I think that's gonna look good for us. Yeah.
Very good. B under updates would be insubstantial COA.
So no updates, we haven't had any insubstantial COAs in November. I'll just roll right into complaints and violations though. So we have approximately 10, various, historic preservation zoning code violations right now that, so I've started working with the police department, the community service officers from the police department. They're in the process of creating warning books and ticket books so that, and we met with the CSO, several times we have, I've got trained them up on various code sections, and what the code says about enforcement. Historic preservation code is within the zoning code, Title 17. So the enforcement violations, enforcement penalty provisions, for zoning code violations and historic preservation code violations when we're doing work that requires COA without a COA. All of that enforcement is all the same. So that makes it easier in the sense that all the planning related, all this planning related enforcement is to have the same process as enforced by the police department. So essentially what that process looks like is there's a 10-day warning. So we can give the property owner or the violator a 10-day written warning. That we now will have a, just like if you were to get a traffic citation, except it will be custom for zoning. And then they have 10 days to comply, and that's in code. For a lot of these things, we may need to work with the property. So they say, well, I can't get a contractor here for X. So we can reasonably work with them, and we can just put that in. If we can't get compliance, then we'll have the option for a citation. Those fines essentially start at $250 and they go up to $2,650 per day. So we're basically starting at the minimum fine of $250 a day if needed. Hopefully they're very often. But we have, like I said, about 10 violations out there that we're seeking enforcement on. I think 3 or 4 of those have come from commissioners who receive those, and we are operating on complaint-based enforcement because we don't have a code enforcement officer who's essentially driving out and actively seeking to find violations. But once those complaints are received, we now have a system set up with the community service officers to respond and conduct enforcement. So thank you for any complaints you've received so far, even going back to those summer where we are working on those. And we'll continue to appreciate anything that commissioners can send us as you're out and about in terms of that complaint enforcement. Any questions on that?
What kind of reception did you get from the community service officers through the police department?
I think they were great. Yeah, I think it's yet to be determined. What kind of challenges they face as they go through this. I let them know that we will absolutely play a huge supportive role however we can. If they go out to a property and they're making initial contact with someone and that person is drilling them with questions, I have a system set up with them where we have spreadsheets and files and stuff set up where when I'm passing something off to them, giving the handoff, I'm giving them all the information that they should need to hopefully answer the basic questions. Like someone says, well, what code section am I by? When did this go into effect? All those things. So they should have those questions right there on their spreadsheet that they can access in the field. But if someone is asking more complex questions, okay, compliance, what kind of stuff do I need to do? That's when they're going to be passing. So I'm going to be playing a big supportive role with community service officers, but in terms of them going out into the field and actually making like initial contact and stuff, I think that they said they feel like they have everything they need, understanding that a lot of that they come back is obviously stuff. And
It's okay, we can circle back. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any questions, anyone on that?
Yeah.
If we could go ahead and this is where I think Chapin should add this email that we just got today on, historic context.
Sure.
Just because it's an update. I don't know if any of you guys attended, that kind of brings me to one thing I was wanting to update if anybody wanted to. I know a few of us attended the historic context webinar. I think Stuart was there and Chapin was there and I was there. We got a lot of good information, but it prompted, I asked a question on Zoom with 300 million people. And I was shocked myself. Stuart, thank you for saying good job, Lori, because I get so nervous. We were on this giant webinar and it just weren't hitting that question that I was just dying to know about, which should come first. The cultural resource surveys or the historic context, and then, you know, everything they talked about historic context was great, but honestly, I couldn't figure out if it would be helpful to have the historic context before doing. So Chapin fired off an email to Lindsay Llewellyn at History Colorado. And yeah, you can just take it from there and summarize. We just got a response today, so that's.
Right, so as Lori mentioned, it's kind of, the question of this kind of, I think, came up after we listened to that webinar from History Colorado. And the webinar was put on by Fort Collins, and Fort Collins was talking about how they were doing a historic context survey for, I think, like, Latinx members of their community, or how automobile dealerships have kind of formed a certain part of their community. So, you know, it started, you know, bringing up thoughts in my mind, well, that, you know, big cities have a lot of different historic contexts, and there's just so much going on in a big city. And so it made me think, well, Leadville perhaps has, you know, maybe we have more than one historic context other than mining, but perhaps it is more limited than a big city. So what, you know, the presentation didn't really break down the differences between big cities and small city contexts. And so that was kind of the question that I sent to the state was, how does a historic context survey fit in for Leadville, in the sense that we probably have just but we probably don't have as many different possible historic contexts as a big cities. And how should we prioritize that historic context survey in our kind of in the plan of obtaining these surveys for all of our district? And I want to chime in a bit further in terms of, you know, a big part of what I do is development, guiding the commissions and the councils through development. So when we are evaluating applications for COAs, and particularly for COAs for additions and things, the code section that just went into effect. Right now, the code says that we would just be reviewing those applications for the Secretary of Interior standards, right? So we're not using for custom standards for Leadville. If we had a new house in a vacant lot, we have custom standards for that. If there's something going on in Harrison Avenue, we have custom standards for that. Everything else, new commercial additions, et cetera, we just go to the Secretary of Interior standards, which are very general, specific to Leadville. So ultimately, we want to have design standards that are custom to Leadville, and perhaps even design standards that are custom to the different character areas. Bankers Road, different character areas of the community. So we ultimately want to have design standards, which means and that's pretty important to get to. We want to get to that as fast as possible, because we'll have a development coming in that we have to review for. Until then, we're just using Secretary of Interior standards. But those design standards must be based on surveys. And so just the question was, would or doing a context survey, would that slow us down in terms of the development review goal of getting to design standards? It basically pushes that one step further. So that was the question. I hope that makes sense. The answer that is coming back today. Yeah. It's not. Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
I don't.
Synchronize.
It's trying to.
So. before-
This came in today.
And we can explain for the student group, certain.
Honestly, I thought the presentation was like someone's PhD dissertation.
Yeah.
The terms they were using.
It was
It
intense.
was not for beginners.
It was not for beginners, that's for sure.
And, you know, and again, the bigger cities have sort of
Right,
full
right.
departments that are only special, they don't have degrees in a certain preservation, they don't have city planners like me who are doing a certain preservation, like they have archaeologists, certain.
If I could show you guys, on that lemon here, one of the presenters from Fort Collins was Rebecca Shields. So she's the one who just left Metcalf that we were working with, that we were kind of sad that she left, because she has got so much experience in doing this, but she was one of the presenters on this webinar for the historic context from Fort Collins, so that's where she's working now, so. I was pretty interested by that, seeing her there, so.
You just need enough budget to be able to hire experts like that.
Right, we could, and they had, what, they said they had 6 or 7 people on staff doing all this, and she is an architectural historian, is that the right term? Cause I remember how I used to mess that up really bad. Cause I, showing my ignorance, but, so, I mean, if the city can hire, I mean, I was blown away by the fact that Fort Collins had that kind of staff for all this, so it was pretty interesting. It was a good webinar. Stuart is absolutely right. It was not historic context 101. It was really in depth, and I think it triggered a lot of questions, at least for me, when, you know, survey.
So the question of the state was basically, should we postpone doing a historic context survey considering the circumstances of the bill and try to pursue as many basically surveying our town as quickly as possible, or should we be doing a context survey as part of this? And the response from the state was that we should be doing a context survey, basically concurrently subversive areas.
Which brings me to the state historical fund grant, which in our budget to them, all of that was included. It was the remaining survey areas plus the historic context, correct, Scott?
It was not every single survey area, but it was all the priority survey
The
areas.
priority one survey areas, right?
Yeah.
And the historic context. So monetarily wise, we could probably do that concurrently. I think it would be smart to get with Metcalf and see what their recommendations are, but what did you have the interpretation basically of this other than doing it concurrently?
No, she did mention, so there are different types of historic context surveys. So I mentioned, I didn't get into all the possibilities, might be, other than mining, the influences of, the continuation of mining, obviously, climax, the influences of, Ski Cooper, Camp Hale, et cetera. She kind of expanded and she said you could, Ski Cooper, you could look at recreation all the way, and the influence of outdoor recreation today. She said, the influence of immigrant and BIPOC communities. So, there are, together we're kind of laying out all these different possibilities for context surveys. So I think my only, and I may be a little bit ignorant in this area, but my only, I guess, remaining question is, so would we be pursuing a context survey that would show us what all our possible contexts are, or are we choosing a context and then pursuing only that? So, for example, are we pursuing a context survey of immigrant and BIPOC communities, which would exclude outdoor recreation and impacts of Ski Cooper and World War II influences of Camp Hale? So I think that's probably my reply and clarification question. This really gets into like in more detail historic preservation specialist work, I think, which is kind of outside of my.
Right, what I'm thinking was, you won't know necessarily about all these different context areas that Leadville could be involved in until we do the cultural surveys. It's my way of thinking, but again, I would like to get Metcalf's input on things that they see and do, because to me, you might uncover that this was an Irish neighborhood, and then therefore it's based on mining and immigrant in a specific area, and we won't know that until after we finish those areas. It's my thinking, I don't know that to be true, I'm not saying that, I'm just that's what triggers my mind to go, well, how do you prioritize what's the proper, I guess, sequence of this? And that's what we were trying to ask and getting, well, you could kind of do it all concurrently and,
Any feedback from the commission on that?
yeah, what do you guys thought? I'm looking at Steve, like, what do you think
Yeah.
about this, Steve?
Put on your archaeologist hat.
Right, help us understand a little bit more.
Well, I think Scott has more experience with these kinds of surveys that we wrote into the grant proposal, so he probably has a concept of exactly what we were asking for, or
Okay.
saying we'd do. But it is now a deliverable, so we're gonna have to do it.
Exactly, exactly.
Scott,
In my opinion, I mean, I don't know exactly what Metcalf is going to want to do, but I would say that the historic context study should be at the sort of front end of our next round of stuff that we do with the State Historical Fund grant. And then because they'll do a lot of research, deep research into Leadville history, and ideally we'll then figure out like what are the different contexts for Leadville, and then that'll help structure what they're looking for as they then do the neighborhood surveys, if that makes sense. In terms of figuring out what's contributing to those contexts that they're sort of establishing through the historic context survey, as I understand the process.
It might make it easier on Metcalf and doing the cultural survey after having done historic context, right? That's what you're saying.
Yeah,
Okay,
at least in theory.
Right,
Things are a little
right,
messy in process, but
Scott, does that fit the schedule that was in the grant proposal?
yeah, I believe so. I don't remember exactly how it was structured, but from what I remember, I had the historic context study being one of the first things that we do with the State Historical Fund, potentially then with one neighborhood going forward, if at the same time, if Metcalf has the capacity for that, or just do the historic context study first and then do the individual neighborhoods afterward.
so Steve and Scott, should we approach Metcalf first then and ask their opinion on how we should proceed and how we should organize?
Well, once the state officially announces.
I was gonna
this
say,
grant,
want to announce, because you were nobody else knows. I passed out a thing, but one of you guys should tell us what you think you know.
Well, I was exploring the State Historic Fund website yesterday, just in case they might have announced something there, and sure enough, I found the spreadsheet that said who had been awarded the grants, and we were listed, and it was the total amount that we had asked for, $131,400 some dollars. So we've been awarded the grant.
Official notification, I know it's there, I've seen it myself, and that's what you're putting out, stuff. But I'm still waiting for my official notification from them on that, but it is, as you can see, what I passed out, the 2-page stapled list is all the applicants. This is everybody who requested funds on this round. That 1-page, front page only that I handed out, it shows at the top, those are the lowest. So you can see twice as many applicants as they were able to award, but we did award several $1 million, I forget what the total, over 4 million, yeah, so they did a lot, but the people who received it are not as many as 5, so. And yes, I think it's right there with that dollar, so it's so exciting, I'm just, yeah.
I think you'll probably get the letter on the 15th.
I think so.
They told me.
Think that that's officially notified people, so I will tell you that Chapin and I meeting, city council meeting on the 19th, and Lauren asked me to update, because I was excited about the almost $1,000 scholarship money, for Safe Place. She was like, well, why don't you update city council, and then I was like, well, no, I didn't. Whether or not that's state historical fund grant. So she was like, well, I have to- Chapin is doing the department update, so I'm just gonna grace him for that. But we were gonna announce that, update on surveys going. I will tell you, I just got a invoice from Metcalf for our first payment. We've already paid them our first $8,000 was the first installment or what they charge us for now. So this is also exciting. We do need to tell city council, I need to see how we're just getting some, we're just gonna keep going, so.
Don't forget, there's money in there for the city too, to help pay your salaries.
That's true, that is,
That should make them
we should.
especially happy.
We updated the council last in August about all, I think all the grant monies that they received so far, so we'll do an update next week. And the announcement Friday. And then we also have a few, $2,000 or $3,000 remaining in the HBC's $5,000 annual budget. So as we're wrapping up the end of the year here, we're gonna talk about using the remaining amounts through my other company spends between now and here to pay down that gap balance. So that come January, we have $5,000 HBC budget.
Absolutely.
Just so we don't that $2,000.
Yeah, that does put that in jeopardy if we don't spend it.
Right,
As long as the mayor's okay.
so, we're. Keep $2,000 really the invoice payment. But come March, I have 4 deliverables due on the CLG grant, which is the whatever we've spent so far, the interpretation money that I spent, the mail out that we spent and things like that, and then this invoice. So looking pretty good, actually. This is, I'm excited, but I'm so scared to say we got the grant.
Steve and Scott in particular, thank you guys very, very
Oh,
much.
thank you so much, guys.
Such a-
This was a phenomenal ask. This was
Much
Yeah.
appreciated. for all your work.
application.
And I will continue to emphasize with city council that this is a working commission, that you are working, getting things done. And it's not just time spent in these meetings.
Absolutely.
Before I read this from the screen, I do want to just highlight this portion of the email from the state, because I do think it's worth noting that. She's basically saying that the surveys that we're pursuing right now, the primary intent is to talk about architectural integrity. But in terms of she's saying that the context study, the context survey will really get into the contributing nature of the buildings to the overall theme of the district, which comes forth to the survey. So I thought that was an interesting distinction between about the context, you're looking at architectural integrity. With the context survey, you're looking at how the architectural integrity contributes to the district.
Lori, yeah, ask Metcalf if they're willing to accept money in advance.
Right.
Because that may complicate their bookkeeping. And also it's a little outside the norm for these grants, I think. Well, I don't know, maybe not the CLG grant, but State Historic Fund is really strict about when you pay things and how you pay them and the types of invoices.
Okay,
So ask before you go too far down that
Right.
road. And if they say no, which they might, then let's ask city council if they'll just let us use the budget money we haven't spent as match for this grant. And then we'll just we'll apply for less money from
Right.
Al Pomar.
right,
However, you take the pressure off the 2024 budget is a good thing.
right. So we could put that as part of the city match. I see what you're saying. That's a great idea.
But,
The
yeah.
main thing is not to lose that.
Right,
$1,000.
no, I
As much
think there are
expenses
a
we're gonna
couple of
have.
ways we can keep it.
Right, right.
Maybe part of that also is saying, we could do whatever documentation is necessary, and just
Right,
documenting that the reason for this is because we're trying to use appropriated budget funds. While they're.
definitely a conversation with Matt before we do it.
Anything additional on updates?
Nothing further.
that covering
Further from staff.
No. Moving on to new and continued business. First point being discussion of publication of code amendments.
All right, so in your, it's the letters in the packet, correct?
Yes.
Okay, in your packet, I included the letter that I sent over to the Herald Democrat last week to the editor with an update on the city's zoning code, so Title 17 zoning code amendments, which were two. So there's sort of preservation code amendments and a huge zoning code package, which is the table of uses updates and definitions updates. So this is something that was worked on heavily by planning and zoning commission and city council, didn't necessarily, that didn't in front of the historic preservation commission. So I put that update in front of the paper, the request that we can meet and talk about that. I have a version that I can, a scaled down version that I can provide to them if they need to have a less lengthy version. I don't know what their, this is my first letter to the editor, so. The word limitations are, but hopefully this is the bigger version if needed that accomplishes the purpose of updating the public on what amendments came into effect and basically what changed, what didn't change, and how it affects their property, and if they want to do any type of project, and give some examples, kind of what the approval process for that is. So hopefully it's digestible by the public, and then, like I said, if the paper needs me to dial that, have it's a little more scaled in.
You haven't spoken with Patrick yet, though.
Not yet.
They can run it as a guest column rather than as letter to the editor. That's probably what they'll do, because it's way over the limit for letters to the editor.
Yeah. And they're definitely gonna want the scaled down version.
Yeah, and I talked with Patrick a bit, many months ago about this, about the forthcoming. So I'll hopefully I can get with them and scale that down. Exactly what we need to communicate and what fit well on paper.
Is this something that could be put on HPC's website? Where we could do a bullet point, kind of an article that refers people onto the website for in-depth information? Would that be a?
You could do a scaled down version of the paper and have it linked to, or,
Do a reframed version that actually gets something that people will actually read and then refer it back to our site for the in-depth information.
Yeah, we can work on that. So what you're thinking,
I'd like you to print this in full on our
Yeah.
site
right?
and then do a very simple, easy to read bullet point type of guest column would be the right way to do it.
with more
That refers back
information,
to
go to this link.
probably several different times in your letter,
Right.
referring back, so we can get all the information out there, but also make it very easy to digest, which should be important for the paper, for
And have the full
your benefit.
bulk of it
Right.
on
I like that. I like kind of like that two-step approach. I think that's the balance that you try to strike with this is someone walking in off the street and they have a property and they don't know what a certificate of appropriateness is. You're trying to communicate that information to them, but also if someone is a little more familiar with the process, they want more detailed information. You're also trying to communicate to that level of detail also. So just trying to find that balance of detail.
Absolutely, and then, yeah, make sure that all of that information is available readily,
Yeah,
but in an easy to digest format.
right. Yeah, I think that's totally
It'll probably be
possible.
a lot easier for you and a lot easier for the paper as well.
Right.
Very good. Any comments on that? Anybody? Any other ideas?
I like the way that you made it very clear how many meetings people had the opportunities to attend to learn about these things. I think that's really important, that if they don't know about it, it's not our fault.
So we don't have to hear that, well, I didn't know thing anymore, because, but we did.
Flyer.
That's on our list. It says newspaper articles, mailers, everything else. They were talking at the last meeting about sending out another flyer, but I think Chapin's point was. If he did send out another flyer, it would be about all the code changes, including the table of uses and stuff. So I don't know if we want to.
Something you should keep the message simple. You know, if you try and tell them too much of a flyer, they won't read.
I think it is, I do think it is difficult to capture this information in a flyer because due to the nature that it's a code. It is difficult to summarize it without oversimplifying too much to where then you're losing the important information through the oversimplification.
Then let's concentrate on getting this into the paper and referencing back to our website.
I like it.
Rather than, on that same note, Mayor, you've always been very good at producing and promoting these newsletters. Do you have any idea moving forward? Who would be doing that? Would it still be the mayor's position? Would it be Lori's
The
position?
mayor actually, years ago, we put it on in the mayor's budget.
Right,
You know, maybe shouldn't be in the mayor's budget. You know, maybe we should put that amount into the HPC budget. And then you guys could do those flyers as you deem necessary.
It's always fun to do.
I have finalized the budget, move that into the HPC budget.
would it be appropriate to move that into the HPC budget, or would it be appropriate to move that
That's
to
not gonna be a self-driven future, I just can't tell.
Would it, are you talking about a separate line item that were publications, or would it?
Yeah, we do that.
It would be safer to do it, I guess, moving that to the HPC budget than it would be to leave it open and hope that somebody runs with the ball after the first.
Yeah. I mean, Dave's good and fantastic, but I don't know whether she's gonna be on the same meeting. I don't know.
I don't want to dismiss the idea of the flyer, because if we, like Joe was saying, if we have this information available on the website, we could just do something that captures people's attention and refers them to the website.
Yeah.
Which you don't have to put all the information in the flyer, just refer them to the website.
There are
Well,
a lot of
flyers can be used for other things. For instance, once we get information back on our first survey, and as we announce future surveys, that's where we can be using the newsletters, right?
That's true.
Not for code amendments, but for exciting announcements that could come out, that would be coming specifically from
You
HPC.
could also let people know, here are the historic buildings that got old.
Absolutely.
You know, a lot of things.
Truly make it
The big thing is to let people know, here's the outline of the district, because people don't have. And something only know, even district, because of the flyers we sent out.
That's true, that's so true, the phone calls that. If they're not, that's true. What do you guys think about having to do a flyer before he leaves, or do we want to move that money into the HBC? And maybe not all of it, the street department does a flyer, right? We'll do a flyer.
The street department flyer on,
So what do you guys think?
Any suggestions? Anybody? Scott?
No, I don't have any particular thoughts.
And as far as responsibility for the newsletter, if Greg isn't doing it, that's certainly something that I can take on and put together a newsletter for HBC. So we wouldn't have to farm that out, and it wouldn't have to cost us anything else.
Would it help moving forward, and I'm sure this is not a popular idea, but we have a flyer that gave to all the realtors in town. That they, like, flyers.
Because honestly, I feel like it's money, because I feel like they're just gonna set our $150.
We visited that a couple of years ago and had a very poor response from the local realtors. And maintaining it as a stock item for the different real estate agents is difficult to do. Sending them out to addresses or to the registered owner of the address seems to be a more effective way.
And we even spoke about, getting the information from the assessor site or the county of when a new, a home gets sold and getting the new buyer's information and sending them something, because the realtors are never, ever gonna tell the truth. We've had problems with it in the past, I'm sorry, but it's being recorded.
But we can do that, it would be nice to do that, but maybe we need to look at doing that on a quarterly or semi-annual basis. Rather than trying to keep up with it ongoing. If we just did it twice a year for home sales or property sales, it would be an easier thing to keep up with our HPC.
I have a question for this, and I think it's taking a few steps back, but how many signs are there that at these historic district boundaries? Not just coming into town, but historic district boundaries that identify the historic district?
One, at the south side of town.
Consider the city rights of way that are in all the boundaries of the city's historic district. Perhaps one of the first steps in this public awareness process is establishing like a physical awareness of where that boundary is. As we take this step into, okay, when inside that district, there are permits required. So that when people are driving, a lot of what people, you know, their knowledge of the historic district or anything in Leadville is from what they see on the ground from, you know, the city code, for example. So what if we came up with a sign package and that was installed in city, right? I'm not talking about a sign on every block, but northern, south, southern, eastern, western boundary, where we had, I don't know, a few signs that would define that boundary.
I love the idea, except that district's an amoeba-like,
It's,
you know, district, so. Yeah, those boundaries are.
if it was square, it would make sense.
Well, even if we did nothing else.
It's like completely ridiculous. You could actually put, and I know you're gonna do this, and you could have a red stripe down the middle of the streets that delineate that boundary. I mean, if it's possible, you could do that. And so that vision, you know.
Right, the signs could be at corners, they could be at corner boundaries within the right of way.
Well, if we just started having visible signage, not monument signs, but visible signage of the National Historic District, created such and such date, just at the south ends of Harrison Avenue,
Yeah,
that would be a great start.
right.
And maybe have a.
That's,
That's
saying that now, because it's so.
Even if we just started there and then slowly started to work the east-west boundaries,
Yeah,
maybe every couple of blocks. He's right, it's a puzzle piece, which makes it difficult,
Right.
but some type of visible signage is an excellent thing.
it starts to ease away some of this perceived frustration, people say, oh, I didn't know it was in the district, I didn't know permit was required. You know, and so if there are signs out there, people are.
If- Yeah, if we have signs, then that potential buyers, everybody are asking questions that right now no one is.
Yeah,
And our frustration with real estate agents in general is that they tend to downplay that because it can limit the uses of properties. So we've tried to find other ways to communicate the same information. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Um,
especially-
I do like how,
And what would be interesting, we've done a signage package up and down Harrison Avenue. Maybe we have signs at both ends, but the map of the district actually down a commercial corridor in a couple of locations, if nothing else, maybe at the visitor center. So that people walking down could see, there's all kinds of people come to us in the wintertime and the summertime, both just for the historical aspect, knowing that they could walk through these designated historic neighborhoods would be a tourism drive. But
okay. Staff and the city administrator to figure out what a possible like implementation of that program. Maybe come back to the sort of reservation commission with some ideas about it.
that's very good. Stuart, you had some flyers you wanted to pass out that were relevant to the walking tour point.
Yeah, I did that. This is just an example. Just a few shops they have, and they put these 18 by 24 just poster boards. I don't, okay, it's just a glimpse of what's in the building, and I think it's just the second part. And I think we still need to, in my opinion, was an app, something of that nature, but this would be, you know, under the app, you can still Harrison and 50% of the buildings out with hologram, and you could read the building.
Would be fantastic.
And
Yeah.
that's that around. And yours did this, but this. And so he sent me their. Okay, this to use a cheat sheet or something. Yeah. And then I know you can set a meeting with the tourism street, just.
In January, yeah, I have been here that, and trying to get somebody from, Colorado to join that meeting as well, and I did want to, see if the commission would, I guess volunteer without Stewart on what the committee is.
I would volunteer.
Basically, you would volunteer, okay.
Yeah.
So basically, I've got Nancy from Main Street, so not an HPC, but a Main Street Nancy. And then Adam and Stuart.
Adam Ducharme,
Uh-huh.
Stuart and I.
And I don't know if I can get Katie, I don't know if Adam wants to bring Katie in, she's working at, you know.
She's on.
It would be the.
Yeah, and so, and then again, I was trying to reach out to somebody at the Colorado office and get them involved, so that could be helpful and give us a little more support.
I got an answer from the Colorado Tourism Office before we said that.
Yes, so I wanted to see what thought, it's not supposed to be an actual HPC meeting day, because it's not an HPC meeting, we're just having some representatives from, yeah.
So
So,
it makes sense to speak as. Which one? To see if we're same.
oh, yes. definitely. You know, and I guess we could meet before I go to. Okay, and so basically that's,
And if we had at least one or two ducks in a row first, and we'd have more say with the tourist. office.
right, okay. So I will set up, a meeting, do you guys wanna do that right now, or do you want me to get with you after? I'm afraid Adam's gonna be a little different than ours, I mean,
Probably be slightly more flexible than he will be.
okay.
And then I, guys, so I just came, somebody said it's webbill.com, that's city's domain.
No,
It's not,
No, it's
It's a
not.
private.
it's right,
It's been a problem for years.
yeah, it's kind of. Conversation.
Okay, cool. Let's start first, take a look at it. The buildings, it seems updated, they talk about early vans, somebody's stamped on this page. It's.
Except for it's not.
What was
Do we know who administers that website?
It's,
Is it just?
it's a web developer down in DV or Salida. They bought the domain name 20 years ago or something like that. And it's been a real problem. Tourism panel was trying to do something about it and they finally gave up.
No, they did regain it, cost them 3,000.
No, that's the We Heart Leadville conversation.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Not Leadville, no.
So I, yeah, but yeah, you would see, they finally gave up on it. And quite frankly, stay with. All that.
Anyway, I guess since they got most of their information from the historic survey, it was done through the excavation in the past, so. I think they just stumbled across it by accident, so somebody's.
All right, so you'll reach out to Adam and then reach out to us.
And then some to date in January for
Informal
the
meeting.
second, that first meeting, yeah.
Any other comments on a potential walking tour or public information campaign? All right, moving on, 23 and 24 goals.
This being the last meeting for December, Steve, at the last meeting had discussed, we kind of need to evaluate what our 23 goals were and what we've accomplished and either set new goals or keep some things on there for 2024.
And I'm gonna skip that for just a second, and we will go through the very last page of our packet is potential 2023 HPC awards. And then we'll move on to the 2023 goal setting, if that's okay.
That's how that's been this.
Last page of our packet, we have 4 possible awards here. If anyone wants to weigh in on these.
These are the ones you guys gave me and I wrote down in our September meeting, I think it was the September 12th or something like that meeting that we had, that you guys were giving me. Addresses and ideas for awards this year.
Has anyone seen if that 311, 313 Harrison, if that's getting close to completion?
They're almost finished.
They've had an inspection.
All the inspections are finished. They're just doing trim on the inside, so no announcements yet.
Yeah.
But they're real close.
Dealing. I'm sorry.
Jane.
Please.
I read January with the
Oh, did you?
restaurant, but I mean, I don't know.
Is that-
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Great.
Ideally, that would happen after the certificate of occupancy is issued. Because that certificate of occupancy, that's the city's opportunity to go back, make sure that, just check all the boxes and make sure that, they did everything they were required to with COA. So you check the siding, the trim, measurements, blast, and all that stuff. So I do check for that at the time of CO. So ideally, we want to have the CO in place and issued, so we know that the COA was previously compliant.
So what we should do is move that one to a 2024 award.
I think that'd be an outstanding.
Plus, this is 2 years, isn't it?
Yeah, the 2 years on a historic renovation is nothing.
Right.
But they've been working with it hard.
What about the pink church? East.
I'm sorry. Way too many opinions.
Anyone else have any comments on the Swedish church?
Does everybody know the story about the Williams?
Uh,
Do you?
some of us do.
It is an incredible.
Please tell us.
Well, story. Chime in. Story. Take it to that church. We're talking years ago. And the guy who put windows down. And so the into some sort of receivership. And they were purchased by someone who never really did anything. So the woman who bought the pink church, she researched it. I think it took her a couple of years. She found for that church, purchased them back from whoever had them, and has installed them in the church. I think I know some issues with in terms of how it all was done. Themselves, to me, is an amazing story.
Well,
Yeah.
she's done a phenomenally good job of keeping the cultural relevance of the exterior colors.
And this.
Yeah, actually, it's used to be damned. She's done a good job on restoring this very important building. So I would agree. It's worth recognizing.
Clearly some backstory on.
It's just their use issues. That's all it is. She's done a good job on the restoration, and honestly, that's really all we're going to be judging when it comes.
It is, and I get my feelings hurt when things happen that shouldn't have happened. Like, until Chapin came along and really helped us push those code changes through, we had no jurisdiction if it wasn't on Main Street, and that was so very frustrating and so very. I mean, some people didn't know that, so they come to us anyway, and we are so grateful and process it like we were supposed to, but really we had no jurisdiction to, so now that things are in place, and the use issue does come into play, and it was just oddly presented to us, so there was some, and another thing, I keep hearing some of the Kurt will always have a house that he wants you to give them kudos for, because it does look nice, but if they didn't go through the proper processes, they go through the COA process, I don't know that we should be rewarding people, and in all fairness to the big church situation, they really did not have to come through us. And that's probably what hurt my feelings, if we're being honest, and being a bit of a baby. That's probably what upset me the most.
More recently, I mean, so they did come to the city for, specifically go from HBC, but they came to the city for essentially their zoning compliance for the conditional use permit.
Right.
And that was approved by, well, technically, the planning commission made a recommendation that, the COA was not, sorry, the CUP was not required. So I believe that did not actually go to city council and it was withdrawn. That was just based on some language that was in the code regarding the difference between uses of SDRs, which is not even in the code anymore, because there's updated ordinance.
Right.
So then the applicant would have gone through that process and they paid for it and everything, and their deck and everything is in compliance, they got a variance in the back, so they've gone through all, as far as I know, all the proper categories, you know, there's 3 or 4 possible categories of proper permits that they're required to obtain, and they've gone through all those if they existed.
So I personally would tend to agree with Stuart that that's one that deserves recognition, and we have such a short list for this year. And that is such a visible restoration project that, you know, feelings aside, it's worth recognition regardless.
Agree.
Unless anyone else here has
Nancy, one,
I have a question. When did we start doing the awards?
22.
2022.
It'd be nice to see, cause like who already got it, 'cause,
I can pull the last.
I have
two.
some timers and I can't remember, we did Gigi's, right? That was like the
We
first
did.
year, yeah, that was the first year. Okay.
Yes,
And
yes.
did we have the railroad depot last year?
We did, the year
Right.
before that, they got the rail yard, oh, it's 2 years ago when they.
No, the railroad depot, not the.
Not the one that we roofed
The
2 years
re-roof.
ago. We did do that.
Yeah, okay.
And I'll pull the list, and be great thought, all the ones that have. Since we started doing. We've given it.
Well, we gave out something like a dozen last year. So I think
Right.
the Pink Church, unless someone has anything else to say about that, I think adding that makes sense. From a community standpoint.
Yeah, I would agree.
Steve?
I'm neutral.
Okay.
I guess to a certain aspect, we do encourage the restoration of structures and investment in storage structures, sure. And that was certain investment.
And at the time, at the time they did the work, we didn't have any jurisdiction anyway, so.
They did say
It's a good neighbor, it's a good neighbor outreach.
That same applies to 115 East Fifth. That was prior to the modification of the boundaries. Luckily, the property owner understands historic preservation, worked with Larry Lucas on that building in terms of, recreating the cedar siding, not, using another material.
And it's on the, so I.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah, so I wonder if church ever even knew the tax credits existed.
Doubtful because she used an out-of-town contractor for the whole thing.
Yeah.
And all of their crew was out of Boulder, so I bet they didn't. Not to say we didn't. We did.
Was it? From these schools, you can go straight to the, they're all paid through the HPC, now it's a little bit straight through the station.
Correct.
Yeah.
I guess the same would apply, ideally, all these would have a CO. Or no.
This is,
Right.
we've done them before just as a recognition award, not as a completion type of award.
Yeah, fair.
That's not to say that that's not something we shouldn't do moving forward.
Yeah.
But. An HPC sign.
Not yet, we're still in the newbie stage, but we've discussed plaques and we have a very, very limited budget. So looking at some of the plaques, just when we're trying to do surveys and all the stuff that we're trying to do. That's just something that keeps getting pushed down on the burner because we have the yard signs. That was what we wanted to do first, see how well that went. And then we've talked every year about plaques.
The big question on the plaques was, now that we've got our first survey in place. Once we get that survey back and we actually have some information on these houses, is to potentially provide plaques. At the owner's cost, if they choose to have them once the survey is completed on different sections of town. Kind of put the cost onus on the homeowner if they choose to recognize their home with information that we could provide.
I know, I can see it, simply, sure, little bit of income coming in. I can see where we would do the plaques, because we have definitely talked about it, and it would be so nice to do that. That's a lot of money, so.
I think you could give these people the same opportunity you want.
100%.
And here's the standard and the link you go to, this is. Award, you know, that they're standardized in the same, or them right.
Just like the yearbook sign. That we discussed, having a uniform sign that they go and purchase it, but then all be the same so that they all fit in, so.
So why don't we add that to our next point in the meeting, which is discussing 2023 goals and then 2024 goals.
In the beginning, it could be as easy as a certificate, a framed certificate.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? I'd like that. I'm sure Bill would like that. I mean, you know, it's something cheap and easy, you know.
No, absolutely, and no, we have a condition, of course.
Not to be confused with certificate of appropriate.
Right.
2023 goals, what we listed at the beginning of the year, goals for the commission. First point being diversity and outreach. The bilingual survey.
I think we've made an attempt, I think that's one that should stay, because I just think that we need to constantly be thinking about that, but then it's your commission. But I would say we have done some. Outreach wise, we've tried to be more.
Well, we've had open houses this year that have been well attended.
I really like.
Which is a
the
first for this commission.
You know, yeah, true. I like interpreting things because it feels like it draws more people.
We did the 2023 community. State of the community,
Oh,
right?
that's right,
Main
we
Street
did.
HBC,
Yeah, we were there, yeah.
yeah. That's, I mean, that's as,
Very diverse, yeah.
yeah, that's great.
That was a great thing, we need to do that.
Next point, historic revitalization grants for prominent buildings on Harris.
Well, for one, 616 Harrison, I mean, he's accessing, he's already got the, he submitted, the letter of request, if you will, to be considered for the same type of designation that the Golden Borough received.
Okay.
And the History Colorado approved that letter, so now he can proceed with the next steps of all that entails. He is working with CPI, with Jane locally. I think he did apply for some of these funds. I didn't see him on the list, but he's applying for some other funds through CPI as well, the Paul Brun
Right. That's
grant.
really interesting.
But that's, you know, that's a pretty high profile building that he has to go through and jump through all the hoops, you know, but fortunately for him, that building, he will, he and has,
Forgive
Been
me,
approved for
616
state-
the hat.
yeah, that block, it's referred to, as y'all know, as the Hatton Block, which are
Right.
3 units
Right.
in that space, but, so that's one that I can think of.
Absolutely. Did we ever get any, has there been any further conversation with the old Beehive space?
Yeah,
I think I updated the commission on my pre-application with.
The one says splendidly,
The one that you said, come back and try again.
no,
since that first meeting.
I've seen some activity. Has anybody walked past there? I've seen some activity in there, not earth shattering activity, but nonetheless, I've seen some things moving.
There has not been further conversation after that pre-application. Which was a potential contractor representative. We may have received a letter. Your
Are there any, is anyone aware of any 2024 planned renovations? The Manhattan block, of course.
Yes.
What other buildings?
Golden Rose building just closed.
I've had a pre-application meeting with the Furman building across the street. There's an architecture firm that's do something on, they're basically looking to restore the historic facade.
Which one is the Furman building?
It's the southernmost single family historic house.
Yeah, the big Victoria, 2-story.
Yeah.
And the little building in front of it there.
Yeah, and I think they're like the porch was enclosed, so they're looking to restore that back to its original historic facade.
Fantastic.
And then they're looking to do like a rear modification, it's essentially tearing off. They want to have, so I think pre-application meeting.
So. No,
Well. This is. It's about. St. George's.
very good. So St. George's.
500 Harrison
Um,
and 616, well, 500 Harrison will probably come through next year. you know.
and forgive me, address, you have to give me a name.
The Golden Ridge Building, the purple building,
The Golden,
next year.
oh, thanks, sorry. And what were you calling that? I thought you were calling it the Golden Borough Building.
The Golden Rose Building,
Golden
that's
Rose.
what's the original.
It's called something else that,
That block has a name.
yeah. Think of it, so, and it says something on the building,
It
it
does.
does, a specific.
It's only the 3 businesses.
Right,
Correct.
right. Tell us again where that stands, because I know they've been working on trying to raise funds for a couple of years now, but is
It's
something.
sold.
So,
It sold, it closed last week, I believe.
Oh, thank goodness.
Do they know what they're gonna put in there?
I heard- So, I know the owner's intentions are to make the retail space, or down there a restaurant of some sort. I don't know what or any details. I haven't met the new owners.
You have,
I have not been introduced to them yet. I'm waiting for that introduction.
Okay.
I think that,
is a renovation. We haven't spoken to them yet, so we don't really know.
I know they.
oh, no, nothing will be happening.
No, no,
Absolutely.
But that's fantastic, the old ownership now is gone there,
Yes.
that's great, are they still managing the property like they were before?
We'll see. That remains to be seen how that works.
Okay,
I do know that I've received a call from La Victoria and she's being displaced.
Oh,
So they're not renewing her lease, so she's desperately trying to find a place. I haven't spoken to the Tim Hill. I don't know if he's part of
wow.
displacement as well. So yeah, I was a little discouraged by,
that's interesting,
I don't know.
To get money, the income alone,
I have direct calls into the seller,
that's
waiting for some info.
Were any of those,
but you'd have to assume that that would affect Tin Hill as well.
I would assume.
so I'm just trying to, maybe one step behind, are any of those proposed changes of use by the new owner that you're aware of?
No.
Okay.
no,
Yeah, because there are some impact when there are changes of use. So.
Yeah. I don't think so, but
it's gonna be so long before anything can.
Most people, they did that with Frederick City, got involved in an emergency, realignment of utilities in the back of the building. The gas is okay, it's part of the building is protected, but the electrical panel is still in the temporary location, like 3 or 4 years later.
Yeah, nothing has ever happened there again.
the only thing that concerns me is that, I know the seller, I should say, or the prior owner, and, I asked who bought it and she wouldn't tell me.
Oh,
So, that only tells me that, I'm sure she knows that it's my duty, responsibility and obligation to make sure that buyers understand what they're buying. So that's probably why, and that's okay, because she knows me and,
which was why I was asking if they were gonna continue management, because it would be nice if we could change that.
I would assume the answer to that too is no. I think they want out from underneath it. She's got her hands full doing other things. And so yeah, I would assume no.
Well, those are the
Which is
three, those are the 3 buildings most in need of renovation on Anderson Avenue there. So the Manhattan block,
Yep,
In that block.
the Chinese restaurant block.
Yeah.
And the D Hive,
correct.
and all 3 of them are at least
change.
from an ownership standpoint, headed in the right
Movement,
direction.
yes, correct.
And then, yeah, it would be exciting to see the Victorian director and the Harrison Avenue restored on the facade. That would be a really nice ad. Any others that anybody's aware of, in town?
The barber shop is moving
Right.
and he's got a zoning change request in to make it a residential. And he told me yesterday that he has to replace at least one of the windows so that it'll open according to the fire marshal.
Has to have an egress.
And so he'll probably have to be coming to us for a COA at some point.
I think he's got a, meeting with city planning tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
He's
So-
It's
requesting
public
to
record,
rezone it.
where the staff's not recommending approval to change to, for that rezoning, that is proposed rezoning.
So that one will go to city planning and then go to city council. It wouldn't come through a COA unless.
So,
Right, yeah, part of
Back to the building for an egress window? Maybe.
No,
It would be facade that would come through.
he would replace one of the front windows, not one of the ones on that are on the slanting.
On the bay.
Yeah, I think that's what the fire marshal is saying he has to do because he wants to turn it into a rental property.
Gotcha. Okay, so, yeah.
Yeah, I gave him some misinformation yesterday. I emailed him after the fact, but I don't know if he got it. I said that I thought that a window replacement would be an administrative approval, and I don't think that's true. Because according to what you wrote and sent to the newspaper.
Well, even if it applies administratively, you can kick it out if you choose to.
Yeah, there's that insubstantial and substantial definition section in the new code. Has kind of like a all-inclusive category that says that if it's not detrimental to the character of the building, character of the district, then a substantial can be reviewed as an insubstantial. So that's basically, if there's any doubt, then I would kick it up from insubstantial to substantial, but in the interest of not trying to create overly cumbersome processes unnecessarily, and that's why we have that language in there, so you can downgrade we can downgrade from substantial to insubstantial.
Yeah, and then it just gets into the style of window, because I can't remember if that's a paned window on those 3 bays or if there's solid glass. So that
No,
would potentially change.
paints, but they've been painted shut for so many years that they're not.
So
operable.
potentially it could be replaced, but kept in the same style, so then it might.
Right.
But if their zoning request is denied, then he may not even.
he may not do that.
Do that.
If he can't, do that
He's,
potential, then,
he's moving into the other space regardless, so.
oh, I know.
Where's he? You can see it,
Scott.
That,
yeah,
Oh, okay.
the old, next to Remax.
Can I ask a question on this particular goal? I think one thing that as a commission you were leaning toward, so I get some direction on that, is you were trying to get it where we, as the HPC and the city, could be the bypass for grants, could get some funding and get the funds set up so that we could help people on Harrison, or, do that. Isn't that kind of what, maybe we could reword this goal to be more of a, we were wanting to be able to be the person that set up the funds and had some funds, even if it's grant funded to us. Some of those grants we're the person that says, okay, you get the grant for that particular building to fix that facade.
Scott, that goes back to something that you had brought up a year or even 2 years ago now about tax incentives. Do you want to weigh in on that, or should we change that wording at this point?
About these grants, historic revitalization grants for prominent buildings, or?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that both things are good ideas. I think we do need to be in the community more, both promoting and assisting with tax credit applications to the extent that we can. I think there could also be opportunities for doing, being a bypass for grants. There's I know there's that one whose name I forget now, grant from maybe the National Trust or somebody that then allows you to then kind of disperse things to a particular kind of, you know, type of structure or particular project in your area. So we could look at that and try to get the ball rolling on that, you know, sometime next year. Although
I think Lori's question on that was, do we want to try to gain those funds and then distribute? Or do we want to act as an advisor as for where they should apply for those funds? What do you think, Scott?
I don't see any reason why we couldn't potentially do both.
Makes sense.
Yeah, but if you recall, we were going through the city council work sessions regarding the historic preservation code amendments. Several of the council members did express kind of their prioritization for establishing some kind of, you know, funding mechanism for residential properties that needed restoration in order to help property owners basically afford historic preservation. So it wasn't every single council member didn't express that. There were 2 or 3 that expressed that was really important to them. And as long as we were kind of keeping that in mind, they would support the historic preservation code amendments. So I did put it in one of the sub goals for the planning department for 2024 was researching funding opportunities. And this is specific to residential, but researching funding opportunities for basically the grant funding and being a pass-through for grant funding for historic preservation of residential properties in kind of in the interest of affordability.
On that, just because Main Street Open for Business was kind of similar to that. Couple things. So I think we're talking about a couple different things to think about, right? So those are kind of higher level, kind of more complicated projects. Like if we identified 1, 2, or 3 projects, much like we did with Main Street Open for Business, right? Then there's also an alternative resource that other Main Street communities have been using. I think I sent an example. I can't remember to who. It was a while ago. I'll have to dig it out, but it's really just a little pot of money, you know, $50,000 to $100,000. And I'll give some case in points. Set aside for mini facade improvement grants, for example, Quincy building, you know, the retail space, Irisman Emporium was vandalized in that window, and they reached out to me and they're like, hey, does the city have a little mini grant that we could use to replace our door? You know, because it is a historic door. I'm sure that it's going to be, you know, it's not just like going to Home Depot and getting a new door. So those are the types of projects too, that the smaller projects that are not full building renovations or rehabilitation. So that's something else to consider too. Those types of micro kind of grants, those don't, you know, they wouldn't qualify, right? For those kind of larger project type, like Leadville Outdoors, I know wanted to do a major, you know, overhaul on their facade. That's a big project, you know, but there's micro projects.
And those micro grants is what city council is specifically asking for is, you know, residential homeowner help.
Right.
The challenge is finding the funding.
Which is failing or.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
Finding a funding mechanism for those micro grants is what typically from what we've seen in our Main Street communities, is the city or municipality carves out a small amount of money and they use, you know, wherever that is, and they whoever's going to facilitate that grant, you know, whether it's HBC Main Street or EDC did one, you know, about 3 years ago. So, yeah, something to think about.
It's an excellent goal.
I think that
It is. I think it needs to stay both. I think it needs to stay us pursuing grants to help people if they come to us and say, hey, you should look at this grant, you should look at this, but also trying to find that little pot of money that we can dole out ourselves is trying to be helping the homeowners in the residential area.
we maybe if we get this thing that's set up like we maybe separate that from the Historic Preservation Commission for so the projects that are requiring COAs, which we're the reviewing body to. Well, technically it's city council, but you know, through these like quasi judicial applications, so there is a separation between the same body who is issuing the permits is not.
I think that's why the Main Street,
It's the go through, yeah.
I think that's why in some of the Main Street communities, they probably did that, so, but it's something to think about. Main Street could do that, they could.
So
use
that
like-
could be part of this conversation, is that body.
Yep.
You know, once those ones become available, she's a minister.
Yeah, I keep it separate, so we, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I do think that, I mean, we should, since this is one of the main things that we're trying to accomplish in 2024, should we have surveying on the list? I mean, because we're obviously
Certainly should now.
Yeah,
pursuing that heavily. And I don't know that this is going to happen before, but if it's worth having on the list, even so that it gets bumped to 2025, is design standards.
Yeah.
Design standards
Yeah,
for,
start sometime.
design standards for exterior alterations, additions,
And if we
basically anything
have-
other than new construction.
Yeah, if we have another slow year for COAs like we did this year, that would be an excellent time to tackle design standards, right? Absolutely.
And, you know, and, that, with with the planning and zoning commission, I found that I've been able to do some work in terms of, getting code amendments, drafted, but when it comes to things like design standards that essentially don't have the time, so we have to hire consultants for that. So just know that most likely, that, you know, right now I have not had time to on things like design standards, but we are hiring a planner, an entry level planner, planner one, that would be doing a lot of like day-to-day, like answering things like counter questions, like, hey, what's my zoning setbacks and stuff, they would be, so that would free me up to work on a lot of special projects. So potentially there's opportunity for me to work on design standards in 2024.
Would those design standards be in addition to Department of Interior guidelines?
They would essentially supersede those. So they can be based on Secretary of the Interior standards, but they customize the level so they essentially supersede.
Okay.
And so it would essentially be just like the ones that we have already for new construction, new residential construction, but they would apply for exterior additions, alterations, et cetera.
In the historical.
Right.
In the entire historic district.
Very good. And then obviously one of our upcoming goals, which we've discussed already, is trying to develop a walking tour.
Yes, and that was day one of
Very good.
2024, because it's
We also talked about doing some workshops. Act. Workshops, learn the history of your house workshops.
Historic Preservation Month is the month of April. So I think as a start, having an open house for the HPC during the month of April, just calling to attention Historic Preservation Month, and then doing one of those topics as an open house event, just a public welcome event for the HPC on the night of one of our scheduled meetings. Makes excellent sense, and we could use that as a way to try to plan for future events. See how that goes, see how involved it is, and see how many more we think we might be able to take on. But doing one during the month of April actually works very much in favor of the commission.
And we could get somebody from History Colorado to come actually do a tax credit thing, if we wanted to do that.
If you want to do that one first, I think doing one that is most publicly approachable, in other words, something that a lot of people would really want to go to, might be our first goal. Try to get as many people in the room as possible.
Yeah, how do you research the history of your home?
I think that's an excellent topic. Why don't we just plan on that unless somebody else has a better idea?
And who's gonna put that on? Who's
We would.
gonna tell them, we're gonna tell them.
Yeah, no, and I don't know that we need a specialist necessarily to do that. I mean, if nothing, we just have we bring the ledger and let people take a look at what types of information we have available to
You
us.
could rotate spots.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Just no one.
no, well, you're absolutely right.
Well, after the bulk of the surveying is done, so after our initial 8th and 9th, and then we'll get the score, which may announce Friday, and additional survey, we'll for these other priority areas and context survey, we will have cultural resource surveys on state forms for a lot of the properties. And so, you know, when we're talking about things like, you know, historic tours and open houses, we talk about, we will have a database. Potentially by the end of 2024, that will have information for the bulk of our, a good portion of our historic properties. And so, you know, those will be readily available. And so those can be, you know, so a lot of that can be the kind of like where a lot of this information can be pulled from when people have questions.
Should be a show and tell for how to do the research.
Yeah.
Most people don't know about the records and deeds that are at the courthouse. They don't know about the sanitary maps upstairs, or the cultural research surveys. A lot of that information back at that point. It could just be a show and tell evening for us, but it would be an excellent way to generate interest. And should absolutely happen during April, when we're trying to promote historic preservation. And that's also right before building season starts, so that works from a COA standpoint as well.
I need to remind the new mayor of that is the proclamation is the first meeting in April, and that we put up the historic banners by Harrison Avenue. Those two things happen every April, but
You sure you can't just stay on?
Yeah.
I'm not looking.
There's a lot of information there that we can try to.
It's hard to have institutional knowledge.
And we'll keep the proclamation going, because I actually have talked about,
Very good. Anything else that anybody would like to add to our forthcoming goals?
And at our next meeting, I'll have a draft of our goals, so that just from what I've gotten from the meeting, and you guys can point it down or fix it a little more, I'll just do it in the rough draft.
Is there anything that we didn't touch on tonight that anybody would like to bring up?
I'd just like to say that, you know, the last meeting of the year, that I'd just like to say that this commission has done so much this year, and you've all heard from staff before, that you guys are working hard, getting a lot done. It's been a pleasure to get things accomplished with y'all there.
The vast majority of this we couldn't have done without your help. Thank you both very much.
Mayor Greg, is this your last official HPC?
What, January what?
Can't keep me from short.
That's fair. Yeah.
I've got 27 days.
Okay.
Possible that he will be at, but January.
I was gonna say, at this point, you're mayor until the ninth, I'm sure.
Then by statute,
Yeah.
everything, yeah.
Okay.
And then the new mayor and new city council could take, you know, could be seated on the night.
So we need one more meeting at the 1st of January.
Yeah.
Let's say whatever.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your guidance, and it's been a pleasure to work with
I enjoyed watching what you guys have done. There's not a lot of guidance involved, and,
But we've done so,
this has been a remarkable sitting HPC.
well, you come up with these great ideas, but none of it would happen if you didn't say, yeah, there's really no reason why we can't do that, and you've done that 1,000 times. That's the best intention in the world, don't do anything if somebody doesn't say, well, then just go do it. So, thank you.
Yeah.
Any more word out of Marcia?
I have not heard from Marcia, since I did the day to do this task.
She has not come home yet.
She's in Littleton, and then they don't, the last time I talked to her, she didn't even know when she would be able to come back to Leadville. Her son says if she gets to come back to Leadville, so. I think it's a little worse.
Where she is, I don't remember, Bank, I'd like, is it?
Well, she was in Littleton, but I don't know if she was moved out of there. They were threatening to move her out at that time, which was a month ago.
Yeah,
Can you
I can reach out to John.
reach out to see and just send an email out to us so that we could send a Christmas card, or
Yeah,
we could go visit if someone wanted to do that. That would be nice if we could do that.
Okay.
One more, I just have a very quick something to add to your complaint file.
Yes.
Rail yard development is putting all of their trash and extras right along the front of Harrison Avenue? Is there any way that we could try to get them to put it somewhere other than the very first thing you see when you come into town? All of their extra pallets, all of their trash, it's gonna be buried until May, so we're thinking about it. It should be nice if that could go on just as an enforcement issue, and it's all the way across the front of, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
I know.
And it's frustrating because there's so much available space there, and they decided to put it in the most prominent part of the development.
It is frustrating, it's more zoning related than HPC related, but
Is it something that we should bring up to the county planning and zoning?
for the rail yard.
Yeah,
No,
that's a
it's-
city.
No, it's absolutely me with zoning hat on, not
Right.
historic hat.
Right.
But, many of you are probably aware, there's been a lot of enforcement activity with the rail yard. And so I can absolutely pursue that. I have
Along with your other 26 items.
Exactly. There are a lot of enforcement actions that are currently in place.
That one just kind of seems like a little bit of a kick in the teeth for the city to have to deal with on top of everything else, and seems poorly played by the developers over there.
Completely agree. So I can,
Not that needs to go anywhere on you.
Yeah.
But if it ever had the opportunity to come up a conversation, it would be nice for the entire city.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I'll keep that in consideration.
Anything else, anybody?
I have a couple of things, sorry, just real quick. Chapin, I thought it was really cool that Chapin, a planning person out of Minturn reached out to Chapin. I thought that was really cool. They're applying for a CLG grant and wanted to know how we broke down the budget, so we shared some of our information. We even shared some of the Metcalf bid, so they could see the scope of work and how that, just to help them. I think it would be really great if we had a good relationship with Minturn. I know we tried to reach out to their HPC and sometimes they're non-existent and sometimes they are. So just, I would love to build that relationship because that's more of a town that I feel like we relate to than some of these others that we do. So that was just an FYI. Also, we'll have a work session and the second meeting in January. Work session at 330 West 8th Street. I just wanted to give you a heads up. The second meeting in January, we will be having COA work session.
So what's going on?
I can send them some applications, we can discuss it. They're essentially, they have
Is it
a quarter lot of, I believe it's 8th and lighter, on the northeast corner. It's a 1940s home that recently purchased the property. 1940s home that has a garage. And they're looking to add an addition on the tiny garage of the house, so basically extending the frontage of the house. And then they're looking to add the garage they're adding a 2-car garage in front of the property. So started with that, it's interesting because it's 1940s, so technically it's past our period of significance. But in 1940s, house can gain significance over time. And obviously, a garage, automobile use garage, being installed in the front yard, which has become the new primary facade. I told them it's out of character with our historic district. The garages ideally should be in the rear.
And there is an alley servicing that lot.
Yep, and so I told them to try and come up with a plan B for that. And I said if they can come up with show us their plan A, what they'd like to do, but also have a plan B to try to work towards staff comments before they come in front of Historic Preservation Commission, so the HBC can give them some comments, and as we've done before a couple times this year, give them comments in a non-public hearing setting, an informal setting, so that they can take those back and try to come through with a kind of one and done successful COA application.
Is that old original garage on the Sanborn maps that we're aware of?
I haven't gotten there yet. Yeah, they said it was original, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, if they have
It probably predate the house, is what I was asking.
if it's I know we have the Sanborn maps go to 1937. Do we have a Sanborn map after 1937?
Well, that doesn't necessarily matter if it's after that.
Yeah.
But if-
Well, but we had established this up here to certificates up to 1970, remember?
Right.
Which I personally disagree with. That's what we ended up doing.
Well,
Well, actually, my, it was 1937.
Well,
That's,
the staff, we didn't, that at HPC, but we didn't do, nothing happened. We didn't do it, ordinance by city council, we did not,
It is
nothing happened in state level.
just a commission resolution, yeah.
Yeah, and so, I mean, I think that, you know, there's an argument that our period of significance hasn't changed fast enough. I think we absolutely should continue that process, but this is why the survey is so important.
and the state would like us to change that, or the state would like us to change that and.
Well, 1937 is gonna preclude anything out of World War II and anything coming out of Camp Taylor, any of those things, you know, that population boom that happened at that point too, so.
Yeah.
I could argue that both ways.
So that'll be the first question at this work session, is this home historic? And so I'll break that down, we can talk about that. And then the next question will be, you know, has it mean significance? And the next question would be about the addition of the garage being compatible.
Understood with that. Thank you, that will be nice to look forward to.
So that's just a curious question, if anybody knows what's going on with the shipping containers?
It's a house that came for a COA and we gave them design standards that they have to comply with. So the shipping containers, you're talking about the ones that are next to freight,
Yes.
between Olsen and Rasmussen. It's gonna be a private residence. They did come before us for a COA. We did grant them the COA.
It's in building.
They have, it'll have a pitched roof, it'll have siding. Nothing about that house will show a shipping container from the exterior, once this is done, and that's where you heard earlier him talking about having a certificate of occupancy before we do any kind of award, so that's where he can go back and make sure that they actually abided by all of the things that we asked for in their design.
And that was a very tough COA, they had to come through us probably 3 or 4 times at least.
And then we put in the front.
Right. A front facing the street board, a pitched roof, the things they didn't have.
And they
We all designed that for them, didn't you guys?
They proposed to back up on some of that stuff, but we said no, that, like, staff level, we said no, yeah. The COA was approved with these kind of requirements based on these designs.
So they did, back here, they tried not to do some of that.
Yes.
They were interesting.
No.
We kind of do that.
So that would be an interesting test case and keep an eye on, not just Chapin, but that we often keep an eye on.
Because we did specific designs.
Oh, we have
drawings today.
exterior, like, it's finished.
Make it.
Absolutely right. By state, would have been less expensive and easier to do than, but he was determined to do it that way, and it's fun. So it'll be an interesting test case for us. Anything else?
Scott, did you have anything,
You've been very quiet, Scott.
right?
No, nothing to add.
Once again, congratulations, Scott and Steve, on all of
Yeah.
these
Thanks for making
grant
us look.
proposals, just phenomenal work.
Done that. Someone who wanted to do grants for the longest time, and we knew that was not gonna happen without you guys, that.
And honestly, wouldn't have happened without the two of you, so
It
thank you.
wouldn't. Thank you.
And on that wonderful note, adjourn at 5:50 PM. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
Have a
Lori.
safe trip back, Scott, aren't you coming back this month?
Yes,
Yeah,
please come back.
starting on
Please come back.
Saturday, I'll make my way home, so I'm excited about that.
Yeah, safe trip, thank you.
Thanks. See you all in January.
Yeah, Scott.